how to lose my job very quickly. Thanks, everyone. Last session of the day, so we're nearly there, and then we get to go to Government House later and enjoy a nice drink with His Excellency and Lady Lorimer. This is a really interesting session, collaborating for marine conservation. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce the chair for this session, Peter Duncan, who is the Senior Marine Biodiversity Officer within the Isle of Man Government.
Thank you. For anyone that knows me, it's slightly ironic that I'm being charged to keep people to time. But this one's close to my heart, marine conservation, obviously. And the first speaker today is Emily Stroud from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, again. So getting your money's worth. Please come up. This is an interesting one because the engagement of the community in the big blue wobbly thing that sits out there is a problem that we all face. So I'll pass over to Emily to tell us how they're doing it in Hampshire.
Can you guys actually see me? Because I feel like I'm hiding. Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm going to try and be as concise as possible and hopefully leave you with a few interesting thoughts on community engagement. So my experience over the last 10 years has been solely with marine, so I'm going to speak from my experience, but it might apply to some land conservation as well. So first of all, why is community engagement essential? I think that's really important that we address that first. So marine community engagement is the memory of conservation and restoration projects, because some of you will know projects come and go, but the people that are influenced, that are impacted, that are experiencing these projects and living in these places and these seascapes and landscapes, they are the ones carrying these memories, these experiences, these learnings, and they carry it from project to project. And that's why they're so important. You know, they witness the change, they carry that knowledge on and pass it on. Relationships. Conservation and restoration is about relationship with people, with place. We cannot have that without relationships. And so people are crucial to the success of any restoration or conservation. They are the first to notice harm. They bring these issues to governments, to councils, to biologists, to us, and they tell us about the differences they want to see. And they deepen our connection, our own connections through the communities that we meet and the experiences we have with them, our own experiences. And it takes time and trust and really needs a shared purpose. And ultimately, it comes down to love. Because today I've heard so much love in this room, you guys speak with such passion, and that is integral in community engagement and for the work that we do. Because when someone is speaking with love, with passion, with gratitude, you want a piece of it. Love is the most infectious disease, and I want to be infected with that, you know. It's a lovely thing, and it inspires action, advocacy, and protection. Because when you care for something, when you love it, you will defend it to the hilt. And that is why community engagement is so essential, because they become the beating heart of these incredible restoration or conservation projects. Now, where can communities come in and really help with conservation or restoration? There's lots of different areas. I wish I had a whole hour. I could really go into detail, so please come chat to me. I have a lot of information to share. But behaviour change, volunteering, building relationships, the politics, data support, you know, seen that through citizen science and such. But ultimately, let's not overlook how challenging this one element is. It is incredibly challenging. And some of the biggest challenges that I've recognised in my work that I've shared with you is relationships. Hands up, how many of you here have had this, just have a completely smooth relationship with someone and there's never been any issues? Oh, that's funny. if you do say there's something wrong. No. So community engagement is the foundation of conservation success because of its relationships, but also can be the cause of its downfall if relationships are not built on first. They are the foundation of any great vision, and the relationships need to be big enough to carry big visions. What is challenging is how long it takes and how quickly these relationships can dissolve if communication isn't there, if consistency isn't there. And I really want to highlight, like, having projects, having staff that are embedded in the communities, that the communities are willing to work with and respect, is so important. And also not having staff changes. You need to employ people who are going to be there for the long haul. And it's a calling. It's not a job. It's a calling. To be a community leader, to be someone who cares genuinely and turns up authentically, is the only way you're really going to gain traction in these kinds of projects. Time and money. How many people here think time and money is a challenge for any conservation restoration? I want to say, in terms of short-term projects, they can be quite limiting in how many relationships and how deep these relationships can be built. And it's really important. Continuity between short projects or longer projects continues. Legacy is really something to consider. Long-term funding, we're finding more and more landscape and seascapes getting more funding for longer periods, but 5 years cannot reverse decades of neglect. So we need to be looking at longer term, 10, 20-year projects. And ultimately investing people and time. So when you're writing these funding bids, put 3 times as much money and time as, because people underestimate how long it takes to build a relationship. With difficult stakeholders like farmers, it might take 4 years before you can even get them in the room having a conversation with you. And that isn't always put in these funding bids, and it needs to be. So you need to be looking at the people you want to be part of this journey and how long is it going to take to engage, and put that in your funding bids and get the funders understanding how relationships need to be built and why they should be built in this way for the continued success and the delivery. And it's also really important to look at leadership and vision. Okay, people trust people. They trust organizations' reputation, but they want a connection with an individual. So again, it's about having the right people in those places, and also having someone who can be empathetic, who can listen and communicate in a very clear and concise way and meet people on the level that they're at. So, and I want to say as well, it needs to be emotional. Messages need to be emotional. We keep making this mistake that things need to be factual, and people will see all these stats of all this decline and get it. And what we're missing is human beings are feeling creatures that think, not thinking creatures that feel. And emotion comes first, and we should be meeting first the emotional response and then factual later. And you can see that in politics at the moment. You can see how some politicians are gaining traction because they're connecting with people on an emotional level, and we need to be tapping into that more. How can we bring people on that emotional journey, not just the factual stats journey? And equity, diversity, and inclusion is so important and often really challenging. It's very hard to sometimes recognize who isn't in the room, and you need to start talking to people. And I do find volunteering is really powerful, that, and bringing the other communities in, and you start to realize who's not being represented, and you need to be asking those hard questions. Who isn't there? How do we get them on board, and building strategies to gain people from different places, backgrounds, ethnicities, learning styles, all of it. How are we getting all of those people involved in different ways? So there's a lot to think about in engagement. It's not just a simple thing. It is a complex project on its own. And often these things are tacked on to conservation and restoration. Really, they kind of need a whole project on their own. They really do. So what are the community engagement foundations that I recommend to you? Empowerment and support. Okay. So how do we empower people? Well, studies show that were done by banks, by the way, which was really interesting. They wanted to know what motivated people. And the results were surprising because it wasn't money, it wasn't careers, it was autonomy, purpose, and upskilling. So those are the 3 core things I recommend bringing into your engagement. Give your people, the people you're working with, autonomy. Allow them to make decisions. Allow them to change the structures that you would like to see. Allow them to be the ones building it around you. Identify influences, so individuals that communities listen to, get them on side, build relationships with them, because they're going to build the relationships that you want. You cannot do everything and be everything to everyone, but you can create leaders around the people around you, and they can create leaders, and that's what you want. Everyone creating leaders. Followers are important, but leaders are more important for legacy, for a stronger, built, resilient network. You need to be identifying the needs of the communities and the needs of your volunteers. Why are they there? Why are they engaging with you? This is a perfect opportunity for social justice alongside conservation. People are not going to care if you do not care about the problems that they are facing individually. if you've got a family that is struggling to put bread on the table or access wild spaces, why on earth are they going to care about helping restore a park or a beach if they can't even access it? We need to be addressing social issues alongside conservation, and it often works hand in hand and can be incredibly powerful. Adequate training is really empowering, upskilling, and ensuring everyone's having an excellent time. So this looks like play, this looks like fun. Creating a safe environment to be themselves, to make mistakes, to learn, to talk about it, to have feedback. How many of you here have been to a bad restaurant and talked about it to loads of people? Yeah? Anyone? Yeah? If you had a bad time, you talk about it. How many of you had a really excellent time? How many people did you tell? There's a bit of a difference. We have a negative bias, so we're going to tell people about the dangers and the negative experiences. And so it's really crucial that if there is a bad experience, you address it immediately and you try and rectify that and you try and give people consistently good experiences through your volunteering, through your engagement. How does that kind of look like? Well, engagement and education. So lots of different opportunities, lots of different ways of delivering that. So art is a fantastic tool. It breaks down all sorts. Celebration events, I'm going to build through because I've got 5 minutes. Building trust, so invest time. You need to be providing safety and, again, clear communication. You need to be thinking about the logistics. Now, this is where the harder, kind of more fiddly stuff comes in, but logistics, adequate funding, and ensuring evaluation is really highlighting what powerful work you're doing. And that's very hard in community engagement because it is, I want to say, spiritual. People's lives change. They become different people. You see this growth, but how do you put that into a data set and then explain that to a funder that you've changed someone's life intrinsically through the way they talk, the way they feel, the way they act? It's very hard, but it's worth investigating. It's something that we're doing and trying to capture. Volunteering is absolutely essential for these programs. How we do that, one of the powerful tools we do that for empowerment is we've created a steering group. So our volunteers actually have say how the engagement strategies happen. We ask them for advice. We bring them into a lot of problems. We have them as roles in decision making. We've got lots of different activities. Citizen science is really powerful. We make sure roles are tailored to the individuals. So when a volunteer comes with me, I sit them down, I have a conversation. Well, my team does. We have a conversation and we say, what do you care about? What is it you want to gain here? How can we help you do that? Okay, there's no role for that. Let's create a role for you. You've got some skills we're going to use. We're going to do that. So we tailor it to the individual experience. That takes time. It really does. But my gosh, they'll give you threefold back. And I'll show you the stats in just a second. So bespoke training, celebration events, really important, evaluation, checking in, feeding back. This is our stats in a year and a half. 455 champions. Over 50% of our events are run by champions, over 170 events. And that at the moment is actually more than that, but it equates to £45,000 worth of time. It's incredible what you can achieve when you get the system right, and we're very lucky. We didn't recruit any of those people that came to us. We're very lucky, but I do think we have a system that also works. I'm not going to talk about this. I've got a very unique training program that I'm going to be starting that is a bit out there, but if anyone wants to talk to me about it, it's about non-violent communication training and about connected conversations, and empathetic listening, not causing division in the in the difficult conversations we're having. Politics is very split at the moment, and we want to bring people into conversation, feel safe to have your opinions heard in a safe way. And so we're training people how to do that. How have we been engaging with the wider people? Online, art, community workshops, tailored education, citizen science, super powerful, really tangible ways to contribute, and attending large and small events. Here's some lovely photos of just doing many things. I'm almost there. So how do we make events specifically inclusive? This is a really good tip that I actually got from Bird of West Solent. I'm going to share with you. But empowerment through information. So whenever you're running any event, make sure there's a most amount of information you can possibly have so people can make informed decisions. And that's just a basis for life. Give people as much information and trust they're going to make the right decision. That's really important. Financial support. All of our events are free. We offer money, we cover people's expenses. We offer food. How many understand how important food? Can you imagine if we didn't have lunch today? That lunch was really important and it bonds us together. Food is actually, like neuroscience wise, food when you're eating, you're sitting down with people, it bonds you together. And we often use food to bring people together and as a thank you, because you've taken care of someone's needs and so they feel taken care of. We make sure that the events and places we go to are accessible and are comfortable. And we make sure, again, people's needs are met. Our volunteers' needs are met. If they need an extra chair or if they need extra breaks. And it's also out the box thinking on your feet last minute. Plans never always have a plan, but plans never go to plan. So 3 things I want to leave with you guys today, thank you so much, is empowerment, thinking about purpose. How can you bring purpose into your life? How can you bring autonomy and upskilling? That's just for you as a person and all the people you work with or manage. Think about how you're doing that. Invest time, money, and understanding in people. Be patient and get that into those funding bids as soon as possible, and try and change the culture around it. Relationships take time, and they're completely worth it. Love. Bring fun, play, gratitude, patience, and opportunity into all of the elements that you do with engagement, and you will have a recipe for success. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I thought the science was hard. Quick question: if such a thing exists for such a complex topic, anyone? Lee, please.
I'm making this up because I'm curious. I could talk all day about marine, so maybe we should have a chat this evening. I'm interested in the champions concept. So there'll be a scale of how championing champions are, but give us an idea of what sort of effort some of your volunteer leaders are doing for you.
Wow. Okay. So we've got one individual who he's quite remarkable. He basically volunteers 5 days a week. He volunteers with 6 different areas in the trust. He does our seagrass surveying, seagrass monitoring. He does our citizen science shore search surveying. So all our events this year, by the way, 14 of our shore search events this year were all run by volunteers. So we've got a really inner core group. I would say about 20 really dedicated individuals who are regularly volunteering, maybe even more than that if we're counting the seagrass champions. I would say then 30, 40 really volunteering on a regular basis. And then we have different rings. So some people do ad hoc events, some people more in education, some we get doing very data specific input. So there's it's quite, I would say a lot of our volunteers are quite involved. It's really wonderful because their experiences often led them to other things, volunteering with our partners. So this is part of a partnership group, and we've actually had them volunteering with Seagrass, we've had them volunteering with our partners, and they're looking for even more volunteering. So it's just kind of this crazy snowball effect, really.
Is it going to spread outside Hampshire and the Isle of Wight? Is it going to creep and upscale, do you think?
That's my plan. I've got a cunning plan, but yeah, that would be nice.
This isn't really a question, or I haven't formed it into a question yet, but I mean, it'd be great to chat to you later. So I do the community engagement for Manx Wildlife Trust and follow as much as I can sort of a community organising model. And, lots of our projects are sort of community gardens or like terrestrial based, and we don't have anything. We have, marine volunteers, but we don't have that same pure community led project, I think, when it comes to marine. And I guess the terrestrial stuff is easier because you get a blank canvas and you can create some raised beds and you can plant some fruit trees. And, the sense of ownership is probably easier to get. So, I mean, it's something we've talked about, and we'd love to do sort of more community projects that are marine based using community organising, but we've not quite got there yet. And like, I was hoping this would turn into a question, but it would be nice to come and chat to you later and to sort of see what you guys are doing and see how we can do that too.
Yeah, I'd love to chat. I'm really, really passionate about this, and I'm really keen to chat more about how that works. I was surprised, because I started with the Marine Champions 7, 8 years ago now, and it kind of snowballed and it's become Wilder Champions. So you guys might have heard of the trust, part of the trust, the Wilder Champions. Well, that was based on the Marine Champion project that we ran, and it was so successful that it's spiraled. So it kind of has actually gone other places and other ways. So the model it does. It's got some power behind it. But I'd love to chat. Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah. And I've heard of the Wilder Champion, so that's really interesting. Thank you.
Cool. Is that everything, everyone? Lovely. I can relax now. Thanks.
Thank you, Emily. The next speaker is Amdeep from Marine Conservation Society. Interestingly, we worked out that we probably met 10 years ago when I used to work for MCS, and I was aware of the project, the Turtle Project in Turks and Caicos that Amdeep was doing, but this is another level of community engagement.
Thank you. Thank you. And first of all, thanks to Wildlife Trust for even having me here. So, if I may, I'd like to transport us to another set of islands, the UK Overseas Territories in the Caribbean, where we've been using documentary film to enable communities to inform conservation solutions. Just really quickly, a bit about myself. Born and bred in Birmingham, and my training is social sciences, so I'm very interested in the human dimension of conservation problems, and that has meant spending a lot of time with fishermen, chasing them around, trying to get interviews, and really understand how they value the sea, basically. And I work for the Marine Conservation Society, so we're a UK charity, and we're fighting for a cleaner, better protected and healthier ocean, one that we can all enjoy. And we've also got an arm of work in the Caribbean UK Overseas Territories for about 20 years now. And for those that don't know, there are 5 Caribbean UK Overseas Territories: Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands, British Virgin Islands, Anguilla and Montserrat. And while they're not part of the UK, they've got a constitutional link to the UK. They're all self-governing, and I've been fortunate enough to spend many years in these areas. And I mean, the environments are incredible. They're remarkable. Certainly, they've got their challenges, but they're unique places as well. They've got unique cultures, demographics, politics, and economies too. And our work in the Caribbean territories and how we've been kind of servicing the government's needs is to provide social science and community engagement, stakeholder engagement expertise. And this has mostly been through the documentary film-based community voice method, which is all about trying to get better collective problem solving. And that's the focus of my talk today. But I think it's important to talk about why did community voice method come into being. And so in the mid-2000s, the general perception of conventional stakeholder engagement methods was that they weren't very clear. They lacked transparency. And a lot of the times they prioritized certain voices over others. So they weren't very inclusive. And they weren't positive experiences. They didn't really promote reflection and respectful dialogue. So the CVM was developed by 2 postdocs at Duke University to try and remedy this issue. And what's really important, the community voice method takes a values-based approach. So it's not just about, it's not monetary. There are so many other values that form people's relationships with nature. It could be spiritual, it could be religious, it could be a sense of place that people get from being from a place like the Isle of Man, for example. It could be the aesthetic value. And that's really important to factor those in. And when people start talking about the values, maybe Emily was talking about it in a previous talk about love, people open up, people are more willing to hear each other, and you can get respectful dialogue. And importantly, values can be plural and they can be shared as well. So you may have sections of the community that may be at either, may have loggerhead issues with a particular issue, for example, they may have tension. Well, if you can show that they've got a lot more in common than they have that separates them, that's common ground, and you can use that to diffuse a conflict and start to work towards a solution. And so we've used the community voice method in quite a few projects across the Caribbean overseas territories. And they've been transdisciplinary projects, so that it's involved scientific research, stakeholder engagement that we provide, and we have strong involvement with the local communities. And these projects have often involved in new legislation, species action plans, and habitat conservation plans. So it's very, very solutions focused. So I thought I'd just quickly go through the process of community voice method, how it actually works. And the very first thing is project design and planning. And I think it's imperative that you've got local involvement at this stage, be it your departments, be it your community members, be it the NGOs, because through their experience, that they can ensure that what you're doing, what the work is doing, it aligns with national or local priorities. And their local context is invaluable, and it can really help make the work go far. And so once you've got that in place, we ensure that our local partners get involved in making an interview guide, for example, for the film, consent forms, and so they're involved right from the start of the process. The next stage is the research process, and this is the filming of community members. And so basically how it happens is we reach deep into a community. We film about 30 people across a cross-section of society, and we're interviewing them about their values, their ambitions, their knowledge, their opinions about the issue at hand. And those people have been identified through a stakeholder mapping exercise done with the community, done with our local partners. And I just thought I'd show you an interview guide, the type of questions and the categories of questions that we ask people. So this is an example from the Virgin Islands where we were interviewing community members about how they wanted to see turtle conservation advance in their islands. And as you can kind of see, the questions start quite wide, and they're very focused on the person. So, what's your background? Tell me a bit about your family here. What's your connection to this island? What are the issues? And not only does that enable the person to calm down and relax, they start to speak from the heart, from emotion, start to talk about the values. And this is where you get a lot of shared values actually from all the participants in this first section. And then as the interview starts to progress, the focus narrows, and we start to ask more specific questions such as, what's your views on existing turtle fishery management in rich Virgin Islands? And so after this process, you've got a lot of video footage that firstly you need to transcribe, and then you need to analyze. It's done qualitatively. So basically how that works is you theme and categorize responses. And this film, the responses are actually treated as data, and the film is like a research paper. And how it works is the editing of the film, it basically chooses the most expressed views. So it's trying to bring up the key themes in the community, and it will show you the variety of views around that particular theme. And we make sure that everybody in the film is in that edit. Okay. And so then you've got the film, you're ready to go to the islands and play the film, and fingers crossed, I can actually show you a minute of this film that we did in Montserrat, trying to get community input into future turtle fishery management.
I can't visualize what is the uncertainty. I really can't,
They're very important creatures. Like, why would you catch something that is so important? Yes, it would taste nice to you, but for me, that's just
You're endangering species.
exactly.
Back in the day, my brother, we'll be catching like 15 turtles a month. And we still couldn't do a thing to the population of turtles. And we had 12,000 people. Now we only have 4,000.
So hopefully that gives you a sense of the range of people that we're filming and the variety of views as well that are being expressed. And really, the aim of the film isn't to tell you what to think, it's to show you the diversity of opinions that exist within that community, to catalyze thought and to catalyze discussion. And so once we've got the film ready, then we create a series of workshop screenings in the territory. And the main aim really here is to show the film and get wider societal input into the conservation solution that you're trying to solve. And the very first thing that we do is we have a scientific presentation, invariably done by our local partners. And Emily, I think you were talking about information. This is where we provide a lot of national trend data about a particular species or habitat that we're looking at. Could be turtles, could be sharks, could be seagrass. And then we provide the regional picture as well. So those participants are primed with that information to then start to discuss conservation solutions later on. And while we do a lot of our workshops in conventional settings like community centres, some stakeholders would rather they'd be more comfortable talking about these issues in places like the beach, like these fishermen were in the Texas Islands. So the film method is very versatile. And so to show the film, we normally serve a meal as well, and so people can digest the film and digest some food as well. And then we get people to come back, and really this is where the magic happens, because you've got people sitting on these tables that you wouldn't think they'd actually be sitting on these tables just because they have particular views, but there they are working together, and they're giving feedback on quite specific questions like, do you think we need a close season for the turtle fishery here? What could the maximum size limit be for the turtle fishery? And so once we've got all this information from the workshops, we then analyze it again. We then combine it with the biological research that's been collected as part of the project. And then we have a draft set of recommendations. Now, it's really important that the local partners input into this, because they're going to make sure that whatever's being recommended can fly. It's going to be practical. And another stage is that these draft recommendations, we also go back to the islands and we show them to a small subset of stakeholders. It could be chief fishermen, it could be water sports operators, and just to show them, look, this is what we've come up with. What do you think? And it's an opportunity for final tweaks. Then we present it to the ministers as a team, and thankfully, this is where the solution-focused aspect of the CVM comes in. We've had turtle fishery legislation being enacted in the Turks and Caicos Islands since 2014. We've got a marine turtle action plan for Montserrat, and they are being enacted now. And that's where the action comes in, and community members have informed that, and are by and large are abiding by it because they see their input reflected in the outcomes. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the challenges we've experienced with community voice method. So you've heard me talk about the method, and you can probably say, well, there's a lot of labor involved. It's a lot of filming, a lot of analysis. It takes resources. Also, a bit of a barrier is that it requires social science training and understanding in the local partners, and sometimes that can be a bit of a barrier. And it's a time commitment from participants. Being at a workshop, you're going to use 3 hours of your day. Doing a filmed interview, it takes an hour. But there are benefits, and I'm just quickly going to go through these. We've done an analysis of our community voice method project. We published a paper at the bottom there, and we know that the films are enjoyed by communities. They are seen as trustworthy, representative, relevant, and productive. And on that representative point, the film has also enabled a cross-section of society in developing conservation solutions, such as youth, elders, women, marginalised voices. It also supports accessible research dissemination, because everyone, by and large, can understand a film, and it overcomes the literacy barriers that might exist if you give feedback through conventional methods like a report. And more, we're starting to see our local partners taking lead roles now, especially in the facilitation of the workshops. And the community voice method is all about power balance, basically, not to hold it. It's also a great advocacy tool as well. Here we are, we showed the film to the TCI Environment Minister this year about this island called East Caicos, and it received very warmly as well, so you can also use that. And a lot of the UK territory departments now want this training for themselves, and we're starting a project now to train the TCI government in the CBM method. Running out of time, but I just want to leave this quote here. This is Tommy Phillips. He's an enforcement officer in the Turks and Caicos Islands. He was part of the community voice method process that enabled turtle fishermen to have their voices in new turtle fishing laws. And he's seen big changes in the compliance with fishermen actually complying with this legislation and embracing it. And I've been doing a lot of turtle nesting surveys across the Turks and Caicos Islands. This is the beach on East Caicos. Before 2020, we never saw turtle nesting here, but we're seeing it now. Something's happening, and it could be that the compliance of the legislation by the fishermen is enabling the TCI nesting turtle populations to recover now. So it does have a conservation impact feeling as well. If people want to know more about the methods, it's on our website, got a QR code, you can come and speak to me. And finally, apologies if I get this wrong, but Gura Mai Aid. Okay.
It was fascinating. I'm sure everyone's mind's racing about how they can apply it. We've got time for a few questions. Richard.
Hi, Richard Salman. I work for Isle of Man Government. It seems to have been a great success that you've had with that, which is brilliant, and I can see a lot of potential with regard to all sorts of issues that relate to biosphere here on the Isle of Man. I'm wondering, how did you choose the people you engaged with, and was there any resistance from anybody about putting themselves forward with the negative judgment you can often get from recorded media these days?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So we use something called purposive sampling, and this is where our local partners come in, and they'll probably say, "Oh, you need to speak to this person. He's an influential person in the fishing community. He needs to be in the film. You need to speak to this community member. You need to speak to this water sports operator." And so from their local knowledge, we start to build a map of people that we could start to interview. And then once you start to interview these people, they'll then tell you, "Oh, you need to speak to him." And so then it becomes what's called snowball sampling, and then you kind of get directed by the community in terms of who you need to interview. And yeah, about the resistance, I don't think we've had resistance. I think we've had more reluctance, basically, from particular individuals. Maybe they were nervous about having a camera stuck in their face, understandably, you know. And in these communities, sometimes these issues can be very charged as well. So people might want to be careful about appearing on these films. But what we've seen is that we always say, look, if you're not willing to take part in the film, that's completely fine. We have got screening workshops, and so there's an opportunity for people to still take part at the later stage as well. And I think that's important about the community voice method, is trying to keep participation open, not having it kind of segregated to a couple of options, but to have that kind of open, continuous gate for people to engage.
Thank you. It's interesting.
I also have my hand up, but it was an extremely similar question. That was a really brilliant talk, and yeah, really inspiring. And yeah, it was just about basically how obviously video is a very powerful tool, but just the reluctance and the barriers it might produce. I work with loads of community groups, and we're always trying to kind of collect their stories and chat to them, and you can have a brilliant conversation, but then as soon as you kind of ask, "Oh, do you mind if I film you?" or even record it as a voice recorder, they sort of suddenly change a little bit, and and it was just basically whether you found that, or but Richard had a very similar question. So
yeah, I mean, there's been situations, I don't know if this is relevant, but we've had people when we've been film interviewing them tell us illegal information, saying, "Yeah, I catch turtles in that national park, no problem." And I think as researchers, we've got an ethical consideration that we have to ensure that we don't put these participants into any harm. It could be physical, it could be incrimination, it could be kind of social exclusion. So yeah, I think we're very careful in the editing phase that no one's actually harmed from this process.
Thank you.
How do you guard against giving too much weight to the people that speak best and are very personable and tell a very convincing story and so on?
Yes, that's a good question. So I did mention you try and use the most eloquent expression. I think it's our video editor ensuring that we give equal time as much as we can to certain participants. We're also very aware that we might be interviewing ministers or people of power in the communities. So we're very careful how we use their footage, basically. Certainly, for example, at sections to do with future legislation. So I think we try and make the first edit, and the software will tell you how much time the person has been involved. That's one gauge. But I think as you watch it repeatedly, you start to see patterns and rhythms, and you might think, yeah, I'm not too sure about this. Maybe we need to edit this out. And I think the fact that we share it with our local partners as well, for them to watch it, and we have a series of edits. Hopefully, we can get it into a kind of acceptable format. And I think the feedback that we've had so there's no real kind of answer to that question. I just think it's being wary of the power balances that exist in the communities and who you are actually giving that exposure to a particular place in that film. Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Just a reminder that we can catch up with the speakers later on this evening at the reception. The next speaker is Julia Henney from Guernsey, who I had the pleasure of discussing a few items with yesterday. Some interesting similarities and some differences with the different approaches, but invasive non-native species in the marine environment is something close to my heart. So, thank you.
Hi everybody. While I'm staying awake I realise we're getting late in the day and this isn't going to be the most glossy of topics, but I'm really the warm-up act for Cris and Adrian next, and that's like the headlining session. So yeah, stay awake for that one. And I thought I was going to stand up here and say like, wow, mine's going to be so different to the other two talks, but actually at the heart of what I'm about to talk to you about are workshops that we held with stakeholders to really get buy-in and support for this principle. So there was quite a lot of points in those previous talks that really resonated with me. I'm Julia Henney. I'm the Senior Natural Environment Officer at the States of Guernsey. In this talk today, I'm going to quickly run through like an introduction, sort of marine invasive species in Guernsey, a little bit about why we are prioritising biosecurity, the objectives of the Marine Biosecurity Plan that we commissioned, a little bit about what makes effective biosecurity, and I'll talk about what was produced off the end of this work. So to start off with, 2023, the States of Guernsey produced an invasive non-native species action plan, and I've talked about that at the IIEM previously, but just to sort of recap, basically, what we did was we tried to spin invasive species management on its head, and we, in line with what's happening in the UK and in the EU, we wanted to really focus our efforts onto prevention. So preventing invasive species from getting to our island and spreading around our island, and then the active management of established invasive species coming sort of further down the line. But we already, we know invasive species are one of the global leaders of biodiversity loss around the world, and unfortunately that is felt in Guernsey as well. There are so many species that are already there, established and causing harm. And in our marine environment, we have species like Sargassum meticum, which I don't know if it's come this far north, but yeah, it was first recorded in Guernsey in the 1980s, and it is now everywhere, in every single bay, every single rock pool, in our most important and our most sensitive sites, like our Ramsar sites. And there's just no effective control measures for it. In fact, the evidence I've seen shows that if you try and control it and try and remove it, it actually encourages its spread further. So it's there, we're stuck with it, and it is causing impacts. Another example of an invasive species that's a much newer arrival to our shores is Divex, carpet sea squirt, or sea vomit, as its a common name, which I love. It's very descriptive for how it looks if it gets well established. And this was first recorded in Guernsey in 2023 from our visitors marina. And we were able to find it really quickly. Thankfully, because of some shared information from Jersey, we were able to pick it up. We think probably in the second year that it had been there. There was only 3 small colonies, and we have been managing this species every year since. I won't go into too much detail about that, but happy to talk about what we're doing. But it seems to be successful. This year we undertook some eDNA water sampling in our marina, and we didn't detect it for the first year. So we think it's now, we've controlled it to a level where it's below detectable limits. I don't think we've eradicated it. I'm not that, I'll keep my fingers crossed, but it doesn't feel likely. And then another one that I wanted to just talk about is actually a pathogen that causes disease in oysters. Called oyster herpes virus, and this is one that we haven't got it in Guernsey yet. It's a notifiable disease. Where it's found in oysters, it can cause almost 90% mortality, so it's devastating to aquaculture facilities. And because we are free from that disease, we have 2 really successful aquaculture facilities. So one that's pictured here in Herm, the most picturesque spot for an oyster farm you could ever imagine. And then we've also got a sort of a seed farm in the north of our island as well. And these 2 companies, they are dependent on that herpes-free status. So it's really important that we don't get oyster herpes virus in our waters, but it is everywhere around us. It's so common, actually, we're sort of not really sure how it hasn't got here yet. It's prevalent in Jersey, France, right across the UK. So I think we've been lucky up to now, but we want to keep it that way. And we think we can't really just rely on luck forever. So yeah, there's some invasive species already here, some causing trouble, but a lot more on the horizon that we want to keep out. We want to focus all of our efforts on preventing those species from getting to our shores. We know that the more established a species get, the higher the cost of managing that species, but also all of those impacts associated with that species are then realised. And this is especially important in the marine environment, where management is so much more costly, so much more technically difficult, and in most cases it is just impossible. Once you get an invasive species in the marine environment, most of the time you just sort of have to, measure it, watch it grow. Unfortunately. So we as the States of Guernsey recognise that we want to prioritise prevention and try and reduce the amount of invasive species getting to our shores. So we have, we realise that's quite a challenge. There's a lot of different pathways in which marine invasive species can get to our waters. So what we want to do was to go up to tender for the production of a marine biosecurity plan. So we set ourselves 3 objectives. So the first one, as I've talked about, is to reduce that risk of introduction and spread of marine invasive species, pests and diseases. But we also wanted to understand what surveillance might look like, so that if invasive species got to our shores, we could find them quickly and we could act on them quickly and hopefully try and keep them at least contained, like we are attempting with Divex. And then the final one was looking at effective control programs, if possible, for existing invasive species, pests and diseases. So what are already here and already established that we might be able to do something about, sort of looking how we might prioritise that and what might be possible. So we went out for tender, the production of this plan, and APEM was awarded the contract, and Lucinda sat here. I'm basically now about to take credit for all of her work, because she produced this whole thing, and she will be around for Q&A, so any difficult ones, I'll point them in her direction. We went out to tender for this document, and APEM were commissioned, and they worked for about 6 months to produce this document. The approach that they took was to look at these 3 separate areas around biosecurity. And they're three core areas, and you really need all of them for that biosecurity to be effective. So there's the sort of normal stuff we might expect to see in a biosecurity plan. So clean your boat holes. There's check clean dry messaging, that sort of biosecurity actions to physically reduce the likelihood of those invasive species getting here. But also, aligned to that is the importance around monitoring and evidence. So making sure that you are undertaking that robust surveying, that you are reporting things effectively, and that those reports are getting to the right people in a timely manner. Yeah, you're really showing that data effectively. And then the third one is all around awareness and engagement. So spreading that messaging, getting people on board, engaging with your community, and engaging with those people that might be stakeholders in the pathways by which they might get here. What IIEM did was basically we approached lots of different stakeholders from all different pathways. So we had commercial fishermen, commercial shipping companies, recreational water users, lots and lots of different marine users, and got them in a room and sort of talked them through what marine biosecurity looks like, and the sort of different range of options that might be included in a biosecurity plan, to make sure that we had their view, so that any recommendations were practical. They were there was buy-in from the community, and they could be realised. And then they also held workshops internally within the states of Guernsey to make sure that any recommendations to the states were likewise achievable. And so the outcome of that was actually two different documents. So we have an internal technical report. So this is for the states of Guernsey. This is the internal stuff that the states is responsible for. And then we also have this external facing marine biosecurity guide. So this is the glossy one for the stakeholders that we can publish and promote and shout about. So that internal technical report, there were four key areas to that. So the first one was they undertook a review of legislation and policy. So I told you this was going to be an exciting talk. It's fun when we start talking about legislation and policy. And they looked at what we already have in Guernsey and what might be able to be tweaked, where the gaps were. And especially they looked at it in the context of international conventions, international best practice, where we might want to be in a few years' time, and made recommendations against that. They also looked at contingency planning and rapid response. So what might the states want to do in if a heavily fouled vessel arrived in the island or something like that, or if a really high-risk invasive species got here, who would act, how would we act, how would we get funding, all that sort of important stuff. They also looked at prioritising species, so there's high-risk species, and prioritising them for monitoring and for control. And then finally, they summarised all of that into an implementation plan that broke it down into what of this might be achievable in the short term, what might be achievable in the medium term, and what might be achievable in the long term. So, if we're talking about brand new legislation that is so resource heavy, it takes such a long time, but actually are there tweaks to how existing legislation is implemented or enforced or promoted, and the same for policy. An amazing document that now there's an internal working group within the states of Guernsey that are working through this and looking at what we can achieve and how and when. And then that external guide. This is all a lot more accessible messaging. It's all about what you can do. There's these two key messages in there for all of the marine users. So we have promoted the ones that are promoted around in the UK. So check, clean, dry, and stop the spread. These really catchy messages that are advertised right across the UK, so that will be commonplace across Guernsey as well. And then there's all this sector-specific guidance as well. So for all these different sectors, so there's recreational boaters, recreational anglers, commercial fishermen, commercial shipping, ports and harbours, a huge wealth of different users. There's all these practical guidance about what you as a user can do to reduce that risk. So, for example, if you're a recreational boater, make sure that you're cleaning your vessel hull regularly, and that you are washing down your vessels in a nice biosecure place and not on a beach where it will just run off back into the sea. Checking your anchor warps and things like that, and all of your equipment, and cleaning off before you're stowing it away. Just really practical little actions that you can take to reduce that risk. And then there was those other guidance for all sectors. So aligning with those three core areas that have affected biosecurity. There's also a lot of advice in there about how all of these different sectors can help monitor and report, and also raise awareness within their sector. So whether that's signage or just even T's and C's and sort of club messaging, and and how they can all work together to spread that messaging out there. And both of those reports, there's sort of a lot in both of them about monitoring and reporting and raising awareness, but they have been written in such a way that they align and sort of complement each other. So the idea is that we will work together as a community, so the states of Guernsey and all of these marine users, and together we can build this whole picture, and with that there will be effective biosecurity. Yeah, that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. I might invoke Chair's privileges and ask, is it too early to say that the implementation of it has been successful? You alluded to it, but
Yeah.
changing a report into something actually working in practice is the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're really early days with that. So the reports were delivered at the start of this year. I then took a very poorly timed sabbatical. So we're just sort of picking it up now at the end of summer. We are all ready to go promoting that guidance with the sort of external guidance in January. We're also doing some sort of targeted promotion in the next month around cleaning vessel hulls. So sort of making people aware that actually it is under existing legislation, it is an offence to wash down your vessels and not capture your arisings. So sort of doing some targeted information about that, about what alternative methods people can do and how they can take account of that. And then internally in the states of Guernsey, we've made a commitment to sort of pick up considerations of invasive species whenever existing legislation is being reviewed, and then with a longer term ambition to look at sort of altering or producing new legislation. But we're also looking at, so for example, our ports and harbours, they are so engaged and so on board with this. They are looking at producing a site-specific biosecurity plan, so using all of this guidance and the sort of the surveillance and the monitoring that goes alongside that. And then later in the year, we'll also be picking up, undertaking some workshops to produce those contingency plans and rapid response plans. So it's not implemented yet, but I'm really very excited about how it will be implemented, because we have all of that support and all of that buy-in within the states of Guernsey, within all those different service areas, and also the amazing engagement we had with stakeholders at those workshops externally as well. So yeah, early days, but I'm very hopeful. Yeah.
I was just interested in the workshops that you did. So was the process that you took a kind of co-design workshop of how the community can design the process for you, and did you decide sort of which were the designable elements that they could design, which were sort of non-negotiable? So this is how we kind of need to tell you this has to be done. Yeah, what was your sort of process on that? And did you have multiple workshops to come to an evaluation session?
Yeah, so this is the point where I probably should hand over to Lucinda, because actually it was APEM that ran those workshops, and it was a format that they've used, I think, quite a few times. Not being the organizer of those workshops, I was sort of almost an attendee. I was really impressed with the approach. It was sort of like, this is what gold standard looks like, and this is sort of like, quick wins in biosecurity actions. And you as a user, what do you think would be achievable, and what do you think would be appropriate? And people were asked to rank what they felt would be most effective and most achievable of all of these different sort of suggestions that have been put in place elsewhere. And those were definitely then, those recommendations came through in that guidance. But Luke, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Am I allowed to?
Yes, we basically approached it using our experience of best practice nationally in the UK and internationally, and as Julia said, put forward all of this information to stakeholders and just listened to their feedback and what they thought was practical and actionable within the resources that they also had available. So, but also trying to be aspirational as well. So explaining to them the importance, most of them understood the importance of biosecurity and conserving their environment. And then we held later workshops where we went through the draft of the guidance forward, and it went on for quite a long time. We went over with most of the workshops we did because we went page by page and asked people, is this accessible? Does this work for you? How does this read? How do you think this could be communicated to all the other people in your sectors? And then we took all of that feedback on board, made changes, produced what we think is a really fantastic guide. And then it was made much prettier by Julia and her team, because I like the sciencey bit. I'm not very good at the pretty bit. But yeah, it was a fantastic. You do yourself down. You were instrumental in those workshops completely. So yeah, it was a really fantastic approach, I think.
Hiya. I am working in policy for the RSPB, so I don't think legislation or policy is boring. So my question is, after all this, do you think you will try and change the legislation, influence the policy? Is that the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, at the States of Guernsey, we actually don't have any bespoke wildlife legislation at the moment, so no specific wildlife law, but we do have a resolution to produce some. So invasive species and biosecurity are likely to be a part of that bespoke wildlife, and that was certainly a recommendation that came out of that technical report. But there have already also been commitments to integrate invasive species whenever sort of legislation is being reviewed. So it might not be the sort of targeted invasive species, so it might be sort of harbours legislation, but whilst they're reviewing it, they will keep in mind invasive species and biosecurity and sort of pests and diseases. So yeah, it's something that we're wanting to do.
I'm not trying to take over, sorry. I was just going to say we're doing a similar project in the Caribbean on biosecurity across the Caribbean Yukots. And one of the things is getting that included in other legislation. It's not just biosecurity, but across the board. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and that I think because we set up an internal working group within the States of Guernsey, so representatives from all service areas that have an interest in marine resources and marine management or marine infrastructure were invited into that working group at the earlier stages. So we sort of co-wrote the tender and all the evidence to support that tender. I think we've had that buy-in so early on, and I think we're just so lucky as well that everybody in those service areas sees the importance of this work, and that makes all of that possible. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Julia. The last talk of this session has been bigged up quite significantly. I'm familiar with the Balearic shearwater from the OSPAR listing, and also from a visit I made to Menorca several years ago. So I'm aware of it, but I think we're going to find out a lot more, and it'll be interesting to contrast it with what we've heard about the Manx shearwater. So I should introduce the speakers. Adrian and Cris, team. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Adrian Lambrechts. I work for the French Biodiversity Agency as the coordinator of the French National Action Plan for the Balearic shearwater. So you may find weird to hear about Balearics today, but you will find out later on, I hope. It could have been that the Balearic shearwater is actually a close relative of the Manx shearwater, which makes sense here, but it's not the case, but you will see later. So very quickly, we will talk about a monitoring program that we managed to build together with partners in the Channel Islands, including a lot of management partners, sponsors for fundings, and technical advisors. So I won't list them in details, but you can see that it's a very collaborative project. So a few words about the species, the Balearic shearwater. So it's the most rare and the most threatened marine seabird in Europe. So the total population is very low, 25,000 individuals for an estimated breeding population of about 3,000 pairs. So it's a critically endangered species with a very sharp decline, 40% per year. So it means that if we do nothing, the species will be extinct within the next 40 or 50 years. So the main reasons why this species is really threatened are mainly the adult mortality caused by the bycatch by fisheries at sea, and also in the colonies in the Balearic archipelago, in the colonies, so the predation by rats and cats. So that's why we, under an international action plan that exists since 2011, we drafted and started to implement in France a national action plan since 2021 to try to reach different objectives. First of all, we try to have a consistent monitoring program for the population. We try to coordinate actions to implement actions favorable to the restoration of the species. We try to integrate the conservation issues of the species into public policies or management plan of marine protected areas, for example. And also we try to inform and raise awareness among the stakeholders involved in the conservation of the species. So back to the species again. So for a migrating species, we would expect a migration from the north to the south, typically from Northern Europe or Europe to the Southern Europe or even Africa. But the Balearic shearwater is very unique for his migration pattern. He do exactly the opposite. After the breeding seasons, so in June, they leave the Balearic archipelago to go northward to the coast of Portugal, and some of the population stay there. But also they reach the Bay of Biscay in the French waters, and finally, and that's why we are talking about Balearic shearwater today, they reach the English Channel, and in particular the Channel Islands waters. And we'll see that the more we go, the more they go upwards. So since or for 2 or 3 decades now, we have good clues to know that now there is a shift of the distribution of the species to the north. So it's directly connected to the climate change, climate change, and that drives the migration northward of the prey, so the fish, related to the increasing of the sea surface temperature. So as I said, the more we go, the more we find Balearic shearwaters in UK waters in general and in Channel Island waters in particular. And actually 2025, this year, has been the year of records for the UK, with several thousands Balearic shearwaters sighted in different places in UK, including Scotland, which is amazing and very, very new for the species. So let's zoom on the Channel Islands. So for example, this summer we had more than 2,000 individuals during one single survey in Guernsey waters, and we also have more than 3,500 individuals on a very small area in south of Jersey. Just 2 examples to show that those waters are now really, really important for the conservation of the species. We also had clues of the importance of Channel Islands waters thanks to a monitoring program we also led in France using GPS tags that we fit on birds after catching them at sea. And some of the individuals we managed to catch reached Jersey, Guernsey, and even Alderney waters during their journey. So that's why 2 years ago we started to meet potential partners in the Channel Islands, and we did some meetings and tried to organize and to talk about a possible collaborative monitoring program. And after two years, we managed to start and to finance and to start the program. And we are going to show you the first and the intermediate results of these different monitoring programs. And Cris will start with the ones led by Jersey.
Yeah. I am representing, well, I'm working for the National Trust for Jersey, but I do represent the group of stakeholders that across the Channel Islands have been working together to put this research, to get this research started. Hang in there. I've got videos for you. We've got even tuna coming up. And this is a bit of a warning for you in the Isle of Man because of the distribution of this species seems to be moving further north every year. So Adrian warned us, showed us how to research them, and this is what you can perhaps look forward to in a few years' time if they carry on the way they are. We set up transit areas and studied 2 sites, one west of Guernsey, one west of Jersey. And you can see the transits. The boat is based in Jersey, hence the strange lines going back and forth from Jersey, as you can see. We just done 2 years of it. We got funding for 2 years. We're on the 2nd year. And you can see on the left, 2024, 2025, we haven't even finished the year between June and October. Look at the difference in numbers there. They've gone from a few hundreds to almost 3,000 birds already counted in one survey, especially Guernsey. You can see Guernsey is getting the lion's share so far. We seem to like Guernsey a lot. And then that has increased, obviously, the wildlife observations that we've had in the 2 years here. When this just didn't happen before 2024, this is all new. As you can imagine, when we first met Adrian, he came to Jersey. We gathered everybody from the Channel Islands, and the other stakeholders are Julia here. You've met Francis, Sam from Environment Department, from Environment Team, and Team Wight as well. All of us got together, got this going. And when we met Adrian, we started questioning our life choices, particularly why are we not monitoring our wildlife at sea? So this is how it all came to be. Now we are monitoring our wildlife at sea. We are likely to have found funding for 3 more years of this research. So hopefully we can complete 5 years of this pelagic research. You can see the percentage here of Balearic shearwaters. This is a species that has kicked us into action on monitoring all our species at sea. But it is so important that we monitor this particular species, we believe. You can see what a massive proportion of our sightings it comprises at this particular time of the year. So now it's time for the videos. Can I work this? I'm not DJ, but here we go. Imagine 2 years ago, you could see 2-3 birds in front of you. And now you're seeing this just in a space of 2 years. I know 2 years is nothing, but 10 years ago, you could see 3 of these birds in the whole year. And now you're out there for 5 minutes and you have this. So, oops, didn't mean to play that again. How can I switch Lambrechts? That one? Yeah. And this has also allowed us to monitor, to record other species that are interacting with the seabirds, such as resource dolphins. Oh, sorry, this is not meant to have audio. We had very interesting sightings of resource dolphins on behaviors that are not quite documented, as in the size of the groups we've had. Could have been 30 individuals coming to the boat, interacting with the boat, checking us out, looking at us, boat riding, from never had seen a resource dolphin before to this, which seemed associated with a lot of activity of birds, was quite interesting. Let me switch again. And a couple more little videos. You can see them coming close to the boat to check us out. See, bit of a hello. Who are you? Look at me, I'm so pretty. I'm about to do something. Whee! Here we go. Sorry, I just get excited. Sorry for the running comments. One last video. They were, yeah, it was like, what are you doing so close to the boat? Very, very interesting. As you can see, this is allowing us to obviously enjoy our fieldwork once every now and then, but also to record interesting species that we weren't even checking or counting before. So now we have a better idea of the Balearic shearwaters and everything else around our waters, thanks to this.
So, besides those boat-based surveys in Guernsey and Jersey, we also managed to build a standardized monitoring from the ferry line from Saint-Malo to Portsmouth through the Channel Islands. So it's an interesting one because it's very complementary to the boat-based survey because it's implemented every week during June to October. So there is a high resolution, temporal resolution of monitoring. So, for example, the first year, last year, it was the first time we, thanks to this monitoring, it's not very obvious on those small maps, but for the first time, we figured out that at the end of the post-breeding season, so September, October, the Balearic shearwaters was mainly present in the central English Channel, very far from the coast, which was not really well known at this moment. So this kind of monitoring is very complementary to the other one. I think we have another video. Oops. Yeah. Oh, it's small. So it's very small. Sorry, but it shows a very huge group of Balearic shearwater related to tuna fishing, tuna hunting, boiling. So this is another result of the first monitoring we implemented. We have clues that in the Channel Islands, the presence of the Balearic shearwater and the recent presence is closely related to the presence of bluefin tuna. So this is something that we are trying to develop, and we are thinking of doing more research on this interaction between these two species. But already we have some good information about this ecological interaction. Also, we have aerial digital surveys that are implemented twice a year, so in July and in September. And I think the last one was this morning, the fourth survey. So this aerial digital survey is once again very complementary to the others. So it gives a very sharp and accurate picture of the whole study area that you can see behind the transect here. So it's a very wide study area. So we only have 2 pictures per year, but still it's interesting and complementary. For example, on the July survey last year, it allows us to know more precisely the accurate areas where the rafts and the foraging birds are concentrated. And to end the presentation, I let Cris.
Very quickly, so tuna is protected in Jersey, and so are the seabirds. However, there was a license introduced to be able to, for this year, to hunt tuna for sport. So we very quickly looked at how to hunt for tuna, fish for tuna without disturbing the birds feeding on the ball because they need their food. All the seabirds participating on that feeding bait ball. And with the help of Adrian and French fishermen, we established this regulation, this code of conduct, so that it is now how do you say it, a regulation, what's permitted and not permitted for local fishermen when they go after tuna that respects the seabirds and allows them to carry on feeding, which happens to work that for the fishermen because they can catch more tuna this way by not going through the boil. And this was implemented thanks to the government of Jersey in 2 weeks' time. It went from draft to legislation attached to the licenses, thanks to the SPD of Marine Resources team. So thanks to them, the birds are now, have an extra level of protection here.
So just to conclude in 1 minute. So perspectives for the future. So we still have to finalize the 25 monitoring surveys and do the data analysis and to provide deliverables like the maps and tables, etc. So as I said, we aim at publishing a scientific paper related to the correlation between the distribution of the bluefin tuna and the Balearic shearwater in the Channel Islands waters. And all those information and data will help us and our partners to deal with conservation issues related to the Balearic shearwater, like the development of offshore wind farms, because there is a project in Jersey, for example. As Cris said, there is also issues with the issue of disturbance by leisure activities. So we have already some concrete action in the field, so that's great. So all this information that we gather, thanks to the monitoring, will help to tackle these issues. And also to last word, maybe next year we'll try to implement the last year of GPS tagging program with catching individuals in the Channel Island waters. So far we've been catching birds in French waters, and for the next year we'll try to tag some birds directly in the Channel Island waters, which would be great if we manage to do it. So I think we are running out of time, so thank you.
Thank you. Worth waiting for, I think. It's probably too early to say, but I wonder whether or not there's a benefit in them moving north away from bad fishing practices. Maybe we'll see an increase, but hopefully not competition. Anyway, some questions. Anyone? Go on, don't be shy. Easy.
The good one.
Sorry, what's your catching method?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you're right. I should have had some videos of catching. So it's difficult, very difficult work. So actually, at the beginning of the program, we had to, because catching at sea, we know how to catch birds and tag with GPS on colonies. Like in burrows, it's quite easy to grab a bird and feed it with a GPS. But at sea, it's a challenge. So I took advantage of a journey I spent in New Zealand some years ago, where they in New Zealand they have the best specialists of seabirds, some of them, and they developed a special technique to catch them at sea thanks to a net gun. So it's a compressed air gun that allows to spread and to launch a net. So we managed to invite this specific specialist from New Zealand to France during the first 2 years of the program. So first he did the catch for us, then he trained us to use the net gun and to build it, to buy and build it. So now we are able to use this net gun, which is very specific and very efficient to catch bird at sea. So we use an inflatable boat to approach the rafts and the groups. Thanks to the net gun, we catch the bird, and then we come back to a bigger boat, catamaran, which is quite stable, to process the GPS fitting and the blood sampling measurements, etc. So we work with 2 boats to do the whole process.
It's really cool. It's like the movies. You just go and like literally opens, it deploys around the bird.
I could show you some videos if you want, but on my laptop or I don't.
How do you identify the species from the air?
Okay. Yeah, good question. Even now, the aerial survey, which are not digital, so the visual surveys, most of them, they cannot distinguish Manx and Balearic, for example. And it's even worse in the Mediterranean with Galquan and Balearic shearwater. But with digital survey, it's possible. It's not 100% of the birds that are identified to the species, but I think it's close to 90 or 80% of the small shearwaters that are identified to the species, thanks to the different criteria like the color, the size, because with the digital survey you can measure the body, the wing spread, etc. It's because it's digital, and with the videos digital survey, you have, I think, between 6 and 10 pictures of the bird per observation. So you have different angle to try to identify the shape of the bird. So it's possible thanks to these techniques. Last one, maybe. Oh.
I've got a bit of a strange idea in my head for a year or two. So when you think about a species like this that has two distinct areas, some are zones and its breeding zones. Oh, there we are. What do you think about the idea of working between the Channel Islands and the Balearics with a marine twinning project? So you twin the seas of the two locations. As far as I know, no one's ever done it before. So it could be a novel way to link the two areas that are this bird's home.
I'm thinking direct flights.
So you mean to work with the Balearics?
I think Cris might know the answer better.
Yeah, working with
Okay. Yeah, we still have some collaboration with them. They mostly work for the conservation of the colony themselves. They also work at sea for the bycatch issues and fisheries, but yeah, we still have collaboration with them, and also with the Portuguese partners, because they also have a lot of Balearic during summer. But yeah, we could invite them to the IIEM 2026. They are also archipelagos, so yes, they will be happy, I think, to participate to the next meeting. Sure.
And that baby.
So, as I said before, we can ask questions at the reception, which is next, but I'd like to thank the speakers this afternoon. And I'll hand over to Graham.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you to all our chairs today. Thank you to all our speakers. It was nice to finish on a high with some really good science there. We are now, if you want to go into Government House, you can walk. It's a nice evening to do it. If you want to walk, there's two routes. The most direct route would be to turn left at this sort of roundabout thing that we lovingly call the Three Eggs of Man. Turn left up there at the traffic lights, turn right onto Victoria Road, and that will take you right up to the roundabouts where Government House is. If you want a slightly longer but slightly nicer route, you can carry on along the waterfront and then turn left and up Summerhill Road, and then you can turn left up Summerhill Glen, which is not our most amazing glen. It's a very urban glen, but it still is a bit of a green space. So that's a nice walk up to Government House that way. If you're getting the coach, Hannah, is the coach going to be out front? We think so. The coach is going to be out front. That will leave on the dot at 6:15, otherwise it will be late. So if you're not on it, you've missed it. A few of the MWT team will be driving, so you can always ask them for a lift. The one thing I would say is Government House doesn't open before 6:30. If you get there early, you'll just have to hang around until it opens. But hopefully that'll be a really nice session this evening. The last thing I want to say is the Wildlife Trust team are all particularly fit and healthy, so we're going to give you all a head start. And we'd like everyone who represents either the Wildlife Trust central team or one of the individual wildlife trusts like Alderney, Manx Wildlife Trust, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust to meet out on the balcony here, because we're going to have a photo. And Lee will help round us all up. So if you're a Wildlife Trust representative member of staff out on the balcony, everyone else, you can start walking up towards Government House. You've got a bit of time to yourself, or you can get the coach outside at 5:15. Thank you very much. One more thing. You've got the address. If anyone's struggling, then speak to one of the NWT team. Thank you.